All right, Thrive Nation, on today's show, we are interviewing Jay Valentine. This is the man that actually built eBay's fraud protection engine. He built eBay's fraud protection engine, and he joins us today to share about the 2020 voter fraud. He's saying that the voter fraud actually happened, that the voting machines were in fact connected to the internet, and that what we are witnessing right now is industrial-level fraud that was committed in the 2020 elections.
Get ready to enter the Thrive Time Show.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here.
We started from the bottom, now we're on the top, teaching you the systems to get what we got. Colton Dixon's on the hooks, I break down the books. Z's bringing some wisdom and the good looks. As the father of five, that's why I'm alive. So if you see my wife and kids, please tell them hi. It's the C and Z up on your radio, and now 3, 2, 1, here we go.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom and we'll show you.
Yes, and yes, Thrive Nation, I'm telling you, I am excited for today's show, because on today's show, you are going to be hearing the truth in a way that's going to change the way you're viewing the news media that's all around you, all the information. Today's show is going to be a mindset-altering show for people out there worried about the voter fraud. People out there being told by mainstream media that there is not voter fraud when you intuitively know that there has been voter fraud. This is the show for you. Jay, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
Well, how are you, young man? Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. Now, Jay, you are, correct me if I'm wrong here, you are a man that actually built eBay's fraud protection engine. Is that correct?
Yeah, I led the team that built the fraud detection system for eBay. The FBI, the Secret Service, the big fraud detection companies couldn't stop fraud on eBay. And my team did it, and we stopped auction fraud. It is now a thing of the past.
So what I want to do for a second is I want to just give you the mic and ask you this. If I get hit by a bus halfway through this interview, what are 3 or 4 things that everybody needs to know about the 2020 alleged voter fraud?
First, it's not alleged. The voter fraud is absolutely black and white, prima facie voter fraud, and it occurs on many levels. But the number one thing you should know is this, that these machines, Dominion and some of the others, they were connected to the internet. There's no reason to connect voter machines to the internet and tabulate their stuff in another location or offshore. That's number one. So the fact that there might have been fraud is behind us. There was clearly fraud. Number two, that fraud did not occur in an ancillary fashion. It was industrial strength fraud. It occurred in 5, 6, 7 states, perhaps more. I'm literally downloading stuff from 7 states right here, and we're running them through some of our search engines. That fraud was massive. It was coordinated. And number 3, people need to trust their instincts. People know. And in the middle of the night, if 4 or 5 states at generally the same time say, hey, let's stop counting the votes. And for the presidential election, for the leader of the free world, and they just stop, and the vote counting is occurring behind closed doors for the rest of the evening, I think people can, with their intuition, reach the conclusion that something pretty bad is going on. So those are the things you should consider right now.
Now, I want to cue this up because, James, you are an attorney. You're
That's
here
right.
from Manhattan.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure, Jay, that we all the listeners are getting kind of the CSI moment that I'm getting now. Here we go. So step 1, the Canadian-owned Dominion vote counting machines are used in the United States elections. Okay. And then the votes, step 2, are the software is called Smartmatic, and it was coded out by communist Venezuelans with close connections to the Venezuelan Chavez and Maduro families. And then step 3, then our votes are stored on a server in Frankfurt, Germany. And step 4, all the votes are tabulated in Barcelona, Spain. And the Smartmatic software gives people the ability to change the vote counts. Jay, it would appear as though voter fraud might have happened. No. I mean, Jay, I think that's what's happening, right? I think people are putting it together, and every time that they mention these steps, the fraud, it's labeled as a conspiracy theory. Help our listeners out there who are trying to share this truth with their family and friends.
Well, all you need to know, and it's now public information, and you can find it through some of the things that Giuliani and these guys are showing, is that these machines were hooked up to the internet. The whole concept of stopping voter fraud is if you are able to do what is called air gapping, which means that the machines have no ability to communicate with or to be communicated to with downloaded software during certain periods of time. So it would typically be a week before the election and then, a week after or so, whatever that period, a reasonable period. But what we know for absolute certainty right now, and it's coming out in the testimony today in Arizona, it came out in the testimony last week from people who are forensic experts who actually have tracked this stuff, that these machines were indeed connected to the internet, that the stuff was collated and sent offshore, that during the middle of the night, all kinds of votes came in that nobody seems to have a track of. You have the state of Pennsylvania where they sent out 1.7 million ballots, but they counted 2.5 million or something like that. This kind of stuff is so preposterous that there are people who may believe there wasn't voter fraud. But if to do so, you have to either be a person blinded by ideology or really stupid.
Now, okay, let's talk about this. Let's say that I was flipping a coin. I'm flipping a coin because you referred to this as, and again, I want to make sure I'm getting this right. You're referring to the fraud that was committed as industrial level fraud. Is that correct? That's the term you're using, right? Industrial level?
That's what it is. It's industrial level fraud. Industrial level fraud means that it is fraud that can be deduced using statistical analysis. So you can take statistical analysis, you can apply it to a data set in a number of these states, and the statistics show you the starting point, which is, there's fraud. Now, that's not proof, it's a starting point. But every one of these states has those statistical analyses. They're widely available. Their mathematics is very sound. Yes, it's clear that occurred.
Now, again, I want to make sure I'm not getting any of this incorrect for our listeners out there. James, just looking at it from the perspective as an attorney, as an American, does it make sense for America to be using software coded out by communists in Venezuela for our U.S. elections? Does that alone kind of worry you, James?
I don't know why you keep asking me these difficult questions, Clay, but I would say no.
Okay.
Yes,
so
it worries
let's go
me.
back to the coin thing here, Jay. So if I'm flipping a coin, and I flip a coin, it keeps landing on heads, over and over and over. Can you kind of relate that to the probability that 130,000 ballots would come in and they're all marked for Joe Biden? Kind of break this down because I want to make sure the listeners can share this with their family and friends.
Well, it's not just the 130,000 ballots come in and they're virtually all marked for Joe Biden. That is the equivalent of flipping a coin 130,000 times and it comes up heads every time. While that's a mathematical virtual improbability, it happened and it's affecting our election. But the worst part about it is that it occurred in 5 different states. It might not have all been 130,000, but it was many. When we look at the data set in, I think, Pennsylvania, and I've got them all open on a screen in front of me right now, I just can't recall which one it is, you have 30,000 ballots, absentee ballots that were received the day before they were even sent out. You have another 30,000 or 40,000 or 20,000 that were received the day they went out. So somebody sent a letter in, said, send me a ballot. They sent the ballot. That person got the ballot in the mail through the post office, filled it out, sent it back, and it all happened on the same day. Now, do you really think that the U.S. Postal Service has gotten that efficient?
These difficult
so
questions.
When you start looking at all of these different things, each of which is the equivalent of flipping a coin 1,000 times, 100,000 times, 20,000 times, and every time it comes up heads. Now, the reason we say heads rather than tails is in every case it favored Joe Biden. In every single case. There is not a single instance of one of these egregious mathematical errors occurring in favor of Donald Trump. Not one.
Okay. So let's talk about this then. You have said, I'll make sure I'm quoting you correct here. You've said the voter fraud actually happened. You've said the voting machines were connected to the internet. And you've called this industrial level fraud that was committed. What can our listeners do right now to help the cause? Do we need to just sit back and give a round of applause to you as you expose the truth? I mean, I was talking to Lynn Wood yesterday about this, and he feels really good about the proof that's been gathered. I feel great about our Supreme Court being the current group we have in our Supreme Court being able to look at information and to make intelligent decisions. I mean, is there anything our listeners can do to help you out, sir?
Well, first thing is, I am not in the business of finding election fraud. That's not what I do for a living. I run state-of-the-art software companies, and we do some very, very advanced technology work. This thing just kind of popped up and happened to come my way because people asked us to look into it, and we did. And we have seen many, many analyses from people far more gifted than we. So that's the first thing. The second thing, though, and I think what's really more important, is that I have no belief that the court system is going to be of any value. So what can people do? The first thing is, if you live in one of those states, you should be crawling up all over your state legislators, your state reps and state senators. Those are the guys who run the local insurance companies. You see them at the Kiwanis Club, and you see them at the local grocery store. And you should tell them that if they vote to certify this election, they are voting to certify a clear fraud. Now, everyone's telling us right now, Lynn Wood will tell you this, I'm sure, that, oh, well, we don't have any time. We don't have any time. Well, we may not have a lot of time between now and December 14th. But let me tell you what's going to happen. Guys like me and 1,000 other guys who are a lot more talented than I am are going to be going through this stuff line by line for the next 4 years. And they're going to prove election fraud. They're going to find people who are going to testify. They're going to someone's going to get a hold of that source code. This is all going to be proven. And if you are a state senator or if you are a state rep and you are voting to certify this fraud, I can promise you that the Trump people will vote you out of office in a primary the next time around. So your political life is on the line if you do this. So what can citizens do? Call your senators, state senators, your state reps, if you are in one of those swing states, which is Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, Georgia, I think perhaps one or two others, Minnesota, perhaps even Nevada. And you let them know, if you certify this, we are going to make sure that you are looking at the end of your political career. Our country is on the line, and every one of us has got to step up.
I agree, and I appreciate you for devoting the time and energy needed to expose this vast corruption. And hopefully the next show we have you on, we could talk about a product or service that you're offering to the world that that's typically what we do on the show here. But I have this theory that it's kind of hard to engage in business in a third world country, and that's where we're headed if you get the wrong nefarious communist people in charge. And so I feel like we need to focus on the main thing right now, and the main thing is exposing this voter fraud. So again, Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Sure. Thanks very much, and nice having a chat with you.
Jay, final question. What's your website? Where can people learn more about you? I know you're not psychologically impaired, but a lot of our listeners want to look you up to make sure they can trust you.
Sure. jayvalentine.com, Jayvalent, like Valentine's Day, jayvalentine.com.
Jay, we're going to put this show out tomorrow, my friend. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. All right, James, we have two new guys joining us right here inside the studio. Aaron Antis with ShawHomes.com and Paul Hood with HoodCPAs.com. They did not get a chance to hear the initial interview we just did there. But can you share with them what you learned by the man? This man built eBay's fraud protection system. Can you explain what you learned during during our interview with Jay Valentine?
Absolutely. There's now a term, maybe it's new to me. It's called industrial fraud. There is no question, Jay says, no question that there was fraud here, period, the end, in the election, Dominion, Smartmatic. and the counting of the ballots and the storing of the ballots outside the United States.
Now, again, I want to make sure we're getting this. He said, and this is on record here, he says the
That's
voter
right.
fraud actually happened. 2, he says the voting machines were connected to the internet, and it was industrial. I got very emotional there. It was industrial level fraud that was committed. Paul, do you think the average person knows that?
I don't think they do, Clay. See, the deal is where there's smoke, there's fire. And a lot of people don't know it. I'm a CPA, and CPAs, we audit things. And typically when you audit, you don't check every single number, but you look for abnormalities. You look for statistical things that just don't make sense. And then that's where you go check. Yep. So all they have to do, it's not a complicated issue to verify that this was or was not fraud, because you're not going to go look and say, oh my gosh, this one person voted wrong. You're going to look for the statistics that don't make sense. And then you go check that out. They hire an accounting firm and they'll have it looked at in 2 days.
And I will just say this. If you're out there today and you're losing hope in what's going to happen, I just want to share with the listeners, there's a big idea I want to share. And maybe, Aaron, if I'm not explaining this in a way that makes sense, you can call me out and I'll try to simplify it. Because we have smart listeners, but maybe I'm too into the weeds. But basically, the game is it's 4th down for America. The ball is, it's like 4th and inches. We only need to go maybe 2 or 3 inches and we're into the end zone. Mm-hmm. We're going to hand the ball to the Trump legal team. Okay, now imagine that our running back was in great physical shape, but was like a 300-pound running back. Just unbelievable strength. And they had an offensive line with powerful offensive linemen. We're going to hand the ball to the Trump legal team, and they're essentially going to just fall into the end zone, and we're going to win, okay? But there's a second legal battle, and that is Sidney Powell, who's saying, why are we even at the final play of the game? We should have been up by 40 points.
Right.
So you have 2 legal battles going on. Sidney Powell is looking into the fraud that even made this election close. Right. Because when all the votes came in for President Trump, the hardware that was used to conduct the election is called, again, I want to make sure everyone gets this, the hardware is called Dominion. The software, by the way, the hardware was made by a Canadian company using Chinese parts. Yep. Step 2, the software on the hardware is a company called Smartmatic that makes it, and there was communist Venezuelan coders that made the software. Step 3, the votes were then sent to Frankfurt, Germany, which means that our election machines were connected to the internet, which we're constantly told they're not. Right. And then the votes were calculated and added up in Barcelona, Spain. So, again, Sidney Powell is going after, why is the score even close? She's looking into the systemic voter fraud that's occurred for potentially over a decade in America, whereas the Trump legal team is just making sure we get in the end zone. Is that a good way to explain that?
I mean, if there's any one thing that should be made in America, I would think our vote for the most important position in our nation should be all made in America. The software should be made here. The hardware should be made here. I mean, we have Silicon Valley. We have some of the smartest coders on earth here in our country. We have some of the smartest engineers. I mean, just the entire manufacturing of this should be done inside the United States. It should be made in America.
The counting.
Tell
too.
me what. Imagine it's a CSI episode, okay?
Yeah.
And just imagine we're on a CSI episode, and imagine I'm the guy who always puts his glasses in his mouth, and he thinks out. Like, he kind of thinks to it. It's like inner dialogue.
Well, there's a special music.
Here we go. Let me kind of. Oh, I came in kind of loud here. Here we go. It appears as though the hardware was made by a Canadian company.
You don't say.
And the software was made by the communists in Venezuela.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there might be something there.
And the votes are transferred to Frankfurt, Germany.
Frankfurt?
And the votes are tabulated in Barcelona, Spain.
Oh,
it would appear as though something is wrong.
Sir, you're brilliant. How'd you figure that out?
I'm just saying, I mean, at what point does Captain Obvious show up and say, I mean, Paul, at what point, when you go through those 4 steps, are you a little bit worried?
Oh, immediately. And, the problem is all this discussion is predicated on the assumption that our leaders or prospective leaders want a fair outcome. They don't want a fair outcome. And the weird thing is they literally can stand up there and stay and just say anything, and the people that vote for him believe it. And so, I mean, how complicated is it? You vote in person, you have an ID, or if you can't be there, then you have your vote notarized and go. Because then, if the notary screws it up, or
why would you not want to have voter
Why?
ID?
Guys, I disagree.
Why?
I disagree because if you take a coin and flip it 130,000 times, every time it's going to land on heads. Period. That's just it happens
that's
every
what the
time.
eBay
It happens every time. How can you guys disagree with that?
That's
That's
what
strange,
that's what the eBay fraud. I think this is the guy
Jay Valentine,
Jay
right?
Valentine, the guy who developed the eBay fraud protection system. He said that is what it's like for 130,000 Joe Biden ballots to come in.
Right.
Yeah,
all
that's
at the same
statistical sampling. That's what that is that, okay, it just doesn't make sense. It's no different than you go to Vegas and there's a machine that 5 people win $100,000 right in a row.
Mm-hmm.
They're shutting the machine down because there's something wrong with the
Yeah, they
machine.
are.
It didn't happen that by chance. I mean, it was designed, or it's a flaw. And they want the flaw. They build the flaws in, and they create an environment. I was listening, Clay, on the way over here. I was listening to the radio. The former AG of the state of Kansas. He was talking about how Zuckerberg took $300 million. I don't know if you've heard about this.
The Attorney General.
Yep.
Is it from Kansas?
From
Just explain-
Kansas,
okay, keep going.
former
Yep.
Attorney General from
Okay, got it.
Kansas, where Zuckerberg took $380 million and ran it through 3 different charities that normally raise about $1 million a year. They go into a state, a blue state, and say, we'll pay for everything. And then what they do is they put these drop-off places for votes, and in a Democrat area, they put it 1 every 3 blocks. In a Republican area, they put 1 every 140 square miles.
Everything that you just said is cited, and if all the listeners just go right now, if you just email me, info@thrivetimeshow.com, info@thrivetimeshow.com, I'm going to send you a document that is 26 pages long of documented voter fraud. It's going to blow your mind.
Crazy.
Now, folks, listen. If you go right now, just type in Lynn Wood Thrive Time Show, Lin Wood Thrive Time Show. We just had Lynn on the show. And let me tell you, and Devin, you can yell at us to verify this. We had so many people download that show. Did it not crash the website? And we have, it's unbelievable how many people have listened to that show. Millions of people have listened to that show. And I encourage everybody, download the show yourself and upload it on your own YouTube channel
amazing.
too. I mean, it
It's
is
amazing.
truly epic, the amount of voter fraud. And I'm working right there in the trenches with Roger Stone on a daily basis on the Stop the Steal to gather the facts. And I'm telling you, this is a thing where my motive, Paul, your motive, Aaron, your motive is to share the truth.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we're saying, listen, if you're a Democrat or a Republican, you need to show up with your ID,
You right?
your driver's license, to show that, hey, you
are
are
who you are.
and you're voting right now.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all we're saying.
Well, Clay, you mentioned an episode of CSI. You know, in CSI, they deal with evidence. And one of the big things with evidence is the chain of custody. They want to make sure who had what, when, where, and how, and who touched it. And with these voter boxes, there's no chain of custody. They don't have anything. They put in cameras where you could watch it, but then somebody unloads the box and then drives it. There's no oversight. There's no anything.
Hey,
They could stop. They could toss out some. They
Think
can do
about
this.
how
Yeah.
your business would run. How would Hood CPAs run if you were submitting tax returns for your clients and your clients had no accountability to make sure those numbers were accurate that they submitted to the IRS? And imagine your employees had no accountability and you never knew which one of your teammates submitted the tax returns.
Right.
How would that work?
They wouldn't. I'd be in jail.
And you go through an investigation for, if one person gets killed, you go through a murder investigation.
Oh.
Well, we're talking about something that impacts 330 million lives in our country. Why would we not investigate this? The Democrats basically come from an angle of, we disagree with what happened in the last election, and they fought it for 4 years, but now all of a sudden this election, let's not even look into
Well,
it.
here's the problem, Aaron. The reason they base this is it's just like our local city council now that can shut down restaurants under the health code.
Health code.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what they did was they got to put these boxes out because of COVID. They can't verify signatures because it's not safe because of COVID.
Yeah.
They got to be able to mail in documents and run them through the scanner that aren't even folded. how do you mail out a document that has no crease in it, and they run it through the document?
Can I
all
share
in
this
the
with
name
you?
of COVID.
Can I share this with you real quick here? Johns Hopkins University came out with a study. By the way, the Center for Disease Control also has verified this. This is not clayclark.com. This is not conspiracytheory.com. The actual number of people that have died in the year 2020 is no different than any other year.
Because it's not a pandemic.
What you just said is perhaps the most simple but yet most profound idea that Americans have to grasp. And so I'm telling you folks right now, email me, info@thrivetimeshow.com, and we're going to share the truth with you. And as a bonus gift, after today's show, Aaron and I came in the studio, and we did kind of a little skit there.
Yeah.
Because I know the frustration people have is trying to explain the COVID-19 fraud to friends and family.
A very awkward
who are so
skit.
emotionally committed to the argument and who are so chronically distracted. And so we recorded a kind of a spoof where Aaron Antis is trying. He hops into the hot tub, and there's a man in the hot tub who is wearing a mask while attempting to eat an ice cream cone.
It was very awkward.
And you're trying to explain to him how COVID-19 works. And I think this is
Very strange.
maybe
It's the
helpful
same
for
guy.
somebody out there. And so
Yeah.
let's end the show with a boom, and then we'll tack on today's little bonus gift to the listeners, all right? Okay. Let's end this thing with a boom. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom!
Hey, what's going on? How's the water?
Oh, it's fantabulous, but I just want to you need to keep your distance and just keep 6 feet away because I don't want your coronas on me.
Hey, no problem, buddy.
Look, I know that you want this ice cream cone, but I ain't going to give it to
pal,
you.
I
You
don't-
just
I
can't
don't
just
want your
come
ice
into my
cream
hot
cone,
tub
okay?
all touching my ice cream cone, looking at it like, I want to have your ice cream cone.
Get your
but
ice
you ain't
cream
gonna get
cone
it.
away from me.
So, how was your Thanksgiving? Was it nice?
Oh, yeah, it was good, man.
Have you ever thought for a second to think, are you putting your family at risk by getting together for Thanksgiving? I mean, the model said that 2.2
You're getting
million
a little
people
close.
might
Could you-
die.
Well, yeah, but the models were obviously not right. They were off by like 25 times what they were supposed to be. And
Okay.
on top of that, the models
Yeah.
were funded by Amazon. So come on.
Uh-oh.
Dude, back away. What
It's
are you
over
doing?
here somewhere.
What are you doing? Get
got
away
that
from
right
me,
there.
you
That's
sick
the
freak.
ice cream cone, right?
No, that is not ice cream cone.
Oh, so what had happened was, it's just very hard to see
sick.
with the mask on.
is
And you
wrong
put
with
the
you?
mask on and you're in the hot tub trying to eat the ice cream cone. The whole thing is very hard to.
weirdo.
I apologize. I did not mean to touch you there. I solemnly swear that my body did not want to touch your body, although my body thought about touching your body, but it didn't mean to. So now that we got
away
the whole
from me.
model thing behind us and the whole ice cream cone thing, I just want to. You ain't scared at all about COVID? I mean, what about the PCR test? They said that we should get tested.
All of that doesn't
and
make any
just-
sense. I mean, you're talking about a test that is supposed to be run at 17 cycles in order for it to be accurate. And everybody knows that it's being run at 35, 40, 45 cycles, which is like amplification. So, I mean, the thing is that it's going to be 92% inaccurate at 35 or more cycles. So, yeah, of course everybody supposedly has it.
So where are you getting your information from? Because I watched Chris Cuomo, I watched the CNN, I watched the MSNBC, I watched all of it, and I also watched super weak pastors like Andy Stanley. I love watching him, and he tells me we should hide from the virus forever and ever.
Well, look, 90% of the mainstream media is really only controlled by 6 different sources.
You isn't saying that the media could be lying to us. Is that
yeah.
what you're saying?
Well, gee, maybe, just maybe.
Well, thankfully, we can get all this behind us as soon as we take the vaccines. And I was looking them up, and it's really cool because they put some big names behind this. They got Billy Gates. They got Jeffrey Epstein. I love Jeffrey Epstein. He is nice. They got Jeffrey Epstein. You got Billy Gates. You got Charles Lieber. And you've got the
Wow.
Dr. Fauci. They
Yeah.
all working together to make this
It's a great
vaccine,
list.
and it's called Lucifer ACE.
Oh, yeah.
Lucifer ACE. And the patent number is so easy to remember.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
06
Yeah.
06
666.
06.
Yeah.
That's cool because we get Jeffrey Epstein and Billy Gates and the Lucifer race and
Yeah,
the
that sounds
06
great.
06 06. It all makes so much sense. I'm excited about it.
Oh, yeah, so logical that I would take a Lucifer ace with the number
Yes.
666 as the patent. Yeah, and throw in some major pedophile action there with Epstein. Yeah.
What problem
that
do you got
sounds
with Jeffrey
great,
Epstein?
man. That's just what I want to inject in my body.
Just because Jeffrey Epstein struggled with pedophilia doesn't mean you shouldn't trust him by putting a vaccine in your body.
Oh, you mean Jeffrey Epstein, the guy who actually wanted to have his own super race of people?
Who
that-
hasn't wanted to do that? That's just, hey, could you, is that my ice cream cone over there?
Oh, God, not back to this
Yes,
again.
just right over there.
Oh, no.
You just gotta get in there. Just
Stop.
right over there. Just
Stop.
let me touch you.